Thank you, choir. This morning, as we prepare to gather on World Communion Sunday around the table, we also complete our series that we've entitled Reclaiming Joy, as we've been challenged to think about joy differently than the world in which we live. That as Christians, our joy is rooted in our hope. It's rooted in our faith, and hope is simply the future tense of faith. Hope and faith together remind us of the salvation that Jesus offers us and the joy that is before us, something greater than whatever this world has to offer. And so we have found what our joy is not. It is not rooted in the world. It is not found in stuff. It is not about how we look or what we have. Joy, at its root for us as the church, is found in what has been done for us in the person of Jesus Christ. When we put those pieces together, when we understand that, we know that God has offered to us an inexpressible and glorious gift, a glorious joy that resides deep in our souls, which allows us as the church to run our race. We open our Bibles this morning to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, reading verses 1 through 3. Hear now the reading of God's holy word. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Gracious God, we pray this morning that you would strengthen us as we run this race. We would do so with joy, knowing the end result of our faith is to be in your presence, to enjoy your salvation. Renew us with joy, O God, the joy of your kingdom. In the name of Christ our Lord and Savior, we pray. Amen. 2012, I set out to accomplish a life goal that I had for a long time, and that was to run a marathon. I don't know why I had this life goal. It was just something I always wanted to do. And so in the fall of 2012, I signed up to run the Pittsburgh Marathon in 2013. I had to give myself about 8 months prep time to do that, because up until that point in my life, I had never run more than 3 miles at any given moment or at any one time in my life. So a pretty bold goal to set for yourself, to go 26.2. So each and every week was pushing myself a little bit further than the week before and building up my endurance, building up and training so that I could complete this race. Let's be honest, I did not set out to win the marathon. I actually lost by about 2.5 hours to the person who did it, right? So, I didn't set out to run to think, I'm going to win this race. But I did set out to finish the race. And that's all I could think about, finishing the race. Everything I ate, the way that I slept, the way that I trained, for about 8 months was to complete this marathon. That's what I wanted to do. And so I was going to do it. I remember taking my last long run through Meridian. It was 20 miles long. So I ran every street in our neighborhood, every single one of them. 20 miles, and I finished that 20-miler right at the front door of the church. At the time, was still a sidewalk, so that, it was a while back, but it was still a sidewalk out, and I finished right at the mark of the sidewalk. I crossed the sidewalk, and I just fell back into the grass and stared at the sky. Now, for the first time in my life, I had just gone 20 miles, which probably should be something worth celebrating, except it wasn't. I was laying in the grass, staring at the blue sky on an April day in 2013, thinking to myself, there is no possible way I can go 6 more miles. No way. I just run 20, and I barely made that, how do you add another 6.2 miles on top of that? That's all I could think about in that moment. And then this sort of odd thing happens when you're actually running the race. Because if you've trained right and you've trained well, for about 18, 19, 20 miles, you're feeling pretty good. You're running, I know that sounds weird, but you're like, I got this. Your body feels good because you've conditioned for it, you've trained for it, and then something happens at about mile 22, and it goes something like this. Why am I doing this? This is so stupid. This hurts so much. I want to quit. But I told everybody I'm running this marathon, so I can't quit. My pride is not going to let me go back to church and go, well, I did 22 miles, pat me on the back, right? So I got to do it, but man, this hurts. I want to stop so bad, but I can't stop because I've come too far and I've trained too long and I got to keep going, but I don't want to keep going. All I want to do is sit down on that curb over there and just be done. But you have to play this mental game for about 3 miles as you're running. And all you want to do is quit. All you want to do is give up. All that's happening in your body is this hurts really bad. And then something amazing happens. And the last half mile or so, as I came into the city of Pittsburgh, the streets are lined with people shoulder to shoulder. And they're cheering you on to the finish line. They don't know you. They've never met you. They're actually calling your name because they can read it on your bib, and they kept calling me Stefan, which was funny. Come on, Stefan, and I'm like, wait, you know how to read? It's Steven, right? Can't you figure that out? And they're cheering you on towards the finish line. And there's all these people that, just like you, trained for 6 months to run this race, and they're all the same time as you, right? So they're struggling just as much as you are. And their hands are on their hips, and they're walking, and some of them are sitting down, and they're taking a break. And these people you've never met, who you don't know, are coming up beside you, and you're doing it too, going, we're almost there. We're almost there. It's just around the corner. We can finish this race. Let's do it. Let's go. And you're spurring one another on towards the finish line. And it is this amazing image. And it should be an amazing image for the church. You see, we've all set out to run this race called life. In this race, none of us are going to win. But we all set out to finish, haven't we? And we have this promise of Scripture that we're surrounded, according to Hebrews, by this great cloud of witnesses. Those that are spurring us on towards the finish line. By a community of people, many who you do not know and that you've never met, that are also running this race with you, encouraging you on to finish, spurring you on towards the goal. Hebrews chapter 11 is this chapter that we call the by faith chapter, because the author of Hebrews is writing a book to a bunch of people who were Jewish who now follow Jesus. And they're not quite sure that following Jesus is the right way, because it has certainly been for them the harder way. And so the author of Hebrews, he goes back to what we say is the family album in chapter 11. And he talks about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He talks about Moses, and he talks about the prophets and all of these people that through their story and being drawn into the story of God have lived by faith. Joseph in Egypt, Abraham leaving the land of his father, Moses leading the people through the desert to the promised land, Joshua taking the people into the promised land, King David, all of these people in chapter 11. It's like this family album. These are your ancestors. These are the people that lived by faith, even though things weren't perfect or things were difficult for them too. They lived by faith. And by faith, they saw the promises of God revealed in this grand narrative, in this grand story. And what he's actually doing for the Christians then and for us now is to say, you too are drawn into this grander story, this greater narrative of God's redemptive work in the world. And he's challenging them. He says, by faith, if you live, you too will see the promises of God revealed. that Jesus, all of these moments of the family album of the Old Testament lead to this promise of Jesus who sets us free. This great cloud of witnesses. It's building on chapter 11, the by faith chapter. The author of Hebrews begins chapter 12 with, and therefore, so he's building on top of that, you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. For us, that great cloud of witnesses, we today, right now, are the church militant. And what I don't mean by that like you're an army. What I mean by the church militant in our church language, what that means is you are the church in the here and now doing the work of God's kingdom, restorative, redemptive work in God's kingdom right now in this world on this side of glory. You're doing the work. And then we have on the other side of glory what we call the church triumphant. Those who have finished their race. Those who have run their race and claimed their place in God's kingdom. We call that the church triumphant. Those that have gone before us, the saints that lived by faith before us and handed the faith down to us. What the author of Hebrews is saying when he says we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses is that we, as the church today, are being cheered on, spurred on by those that went before us. A great cloud of witnesses that lived by faith, cheering us on to the finish line. To keep pushing, to keep going, even though it hurts, even though it might be a struggle, even though it feels like it might be something impossible. And so we have this encouragement in twofold way. One, from the church on the ground. From one another, building each other up. You can do this, you got this. And then from the church in glory. The great cloud of witnesses. Spurring us on to finish our race and to run it well. That's what the author of Hebrews is challenging us. And he gives us 3 ways that we can run our race well. The first one is that Hebrews says that we have to throw off the things that hinder us and the sin that so easily entangles us. When I was younger, I ran track. I was a pretty decent hurdler. And I ran the 100, 200 hurdles, and then I was part of the 4x100 relay team. And so we would train a lot for these sprints. But in order to train for the sprints, you know what our coach would do to us? He would put a parachute on our back. Have you ever tried to run with a parachute on your back? It's like walking. Because on those windy days, you felt like you were just going to fly off into the atmosphere. Running with this parachute on your back put so much drag on you that it was hard. It felt like you're running through quicksand. But you know, it wouldn't be really smart to run the race with a parachute on your back, would it? Who would do that? That was just for training. The thing is, when we get ready to run the race without the parachute on us, man, you felt like you were flying, right? Without that thing that was holding you back, that thing that was creating drag on you, you honestly felt like you were running on air, like nothing could stop you. Just in anything in your life that offers resistance, when you take that resistance away, you go, whoa, that actually is pretty easy. This is what sin and the things that so easily entangle us do to us. They hold us back. They become weights too heavy to bear. That nobody in their right mind would run a race carrying extra weight. It's what we do. What's your parachute? What's the thing that hinders you? What's the sin that so easily entangles you? Hebrews tells us we've got to throw these things off. Is it fear? Anxiety? Is it shame? All these things become these heavy burdens to carry, these weights that we have to bear. If we keep carrying them and not handing them over to Jesus, we'll never be able to actually run our race. The beauty of the gospel is that Jesus comes and he takes that stuff. It's like cutting the parachute off. That we can run free without the resistance, without the weight to carry. But you see, friends, we got to hand it over. We got to let it go. Because Jesus took it for us. The second thing that we have to do to run our race well, according to Hebrews, is to run with perseverance the race that's been marked out for us. You know, we live these lives where we want to be on the mountaintop. And I think maybe one of the greatest cultural problems we might be facing right now is that everybody wants to be on the mountaintop, but nobody actually wants to climb the mountain to get there. We just want a helicopter to just drop us off on top. We want to stand on the top of glory and joy. But in order to do that, we got to climb the mountain. We live in a world, in a culture that says when things get hard or difficult, the easiest thing to do is to just cut and run, just to start over, because we have so many options available to us. It's really easy to do. But you see, anybody can start a race. Every person in this church can start a marathon. It's true. There's nothing, you don't get medals for starting the race. You only get medals for finishing. In order to finish it, you have to run with perseverance. It will not be easy. I remember that first marathon that I ran. I was out to dinner with my brother-in-law the night before. He's run like 20 plus. He's a crazy person. 2 was enough. I'll never do it again. So my wife wants you to hold me to that, but I'll never do it again. He said, if you're going to finish, it's going to hurt. Man, no truer words were ever spoken than that. He said, you just got to push through it. It's about perseverance. It's about consistency. It's about grit. Angela Lee Ducksworth set out to do a study on American culture. She wanted to find out what made people successful in life. She expected to find out that success was about privilege, that success was about economic status and education. Those were the 3 things that she thought would be markers of successful people in life. And she measured all kinds of different things of success. Do you know what she found? She found that there was only one common factor in successful people in our country. Grit. It had nothing to do with where you grew up, where you went to school, what color your skin was. It had nothing to do with economic status. She was shocked to find out that the thing that made people successful in life was grit, an ability to persevere toward their goal no matter what. Run with perseverance the race marked out for you. If you believe that God has a plan and a purpose for your life, then perseverance must be part of your Christian faith. That we, as the church, as part of our witness, must continue towards our goal. Race marked out for us. To get there, it's going to hurt. To get there will be moments of struggle and pain. To get there was going to be difficult. Not everybody's going to be happy along the way. But we have to have a sense of perseverance in how we function. Which leads us to the third marker, the third thing that Hebrews says that we have to do in order to run our race well. That is to fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. To keep our eyes on the goal. Because at the center of this great cloud of witnesses is the one who ran this race to perfection. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith. That's our goal. It's so easy to get distracted by other things, isn't it? It's so easy to get lost in the world. And we're often like my dog in the yard. Squirrel. Right? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author, perfecter of our faith. See, friends, to run our race well, we have to stay on course. We have to run towards the goal. Nobody sets out to run a race to nowhere. We run towards something. And we always move forward. That's the call of the church. It's how we are to live as the church, as Christians in this world. Why? Because the joy set before him, Jesus, endured the cross and its shame. The joy set before him is not the cross, but the finish line. Jesus saw the cross as something worth going to, pain worth walking through, that you and I might know salvation, might know the author and pioneer and perfecter of our faith. It's easy to fix our eyes on the problem. But our faith says, fix your eyes on Jesus. The joy set before us is more than whatever momentary struggle or pain we might have to walk through. See, as we prepare to come to this table, we are reminded of the joy set before Jesus that he endured. It's scorn and its shame. That we fix our minds and our eyes and our hearts on him so that we will not grow weary or lose heart. We have offered to us the joy of salvation. We have offered to us on this race that we are running called life, pioneer and perfecter of our faith. The one who ran this race to perfection. We fix our eyes on him. At the heart of reclaiming joy for us as the church is found here in the signs and symbols of this table. Jesus endured such opposition from sinners, such scorn and shame. We might have the joy of salvation, the joy of the kingdom. Come to this table today, free from the things that hinder you, the sin that so easily entangles you. Come to this table to be nourished and fed, that you might run your race with perseverance. You may fix your eyes, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. That we all could run this race well, cheered on by this great cloud of witnesses. The joy of our salvation is before us. Come and be fed. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's prepare to come to the table.